In the heart of South Texas, near the mysterious border of Mexico, sprawls a vast ranch covering 1,000 acres of untamed wilderness. It was here, amidst the sprawling fields and dense underbrush, that I found myself helping a friend. His hired hand had fallen ill, and the chores of overseeing this immense property fell to me. The ranch was a hunter's paradise, dotted with 8 deer feeders designed to attract and retain game. Wealthy hunters would travel from afar to hunt a prized buck in these parts. My task seemed simple enough. Maintain the feeders, oversee the property, and conduct a head count of the deer. One crisp evening, just as the sun began its descent and the shadows grew long, I set out to the deer blinds. The feeders sprung to life, dispensing corn as the deer, with their majestic antlers, cautiously emerged from the underbrush. As I began the head count, the last rays of sunlight vanished, plunging the ranch into darkness. The onset of winter meant early nights, and I found myself enveloped in the pitch black, the deer having retreated. It was then that I heard it, a rustling sound from behind the blind. Curious, I assumed the deer were returning for more feed. Peering through the window, I shone my dimming spotlight, hoping to catch the glint of their eyes, but saw nothing. The noise grew louder, more insistent. Straining to see through the darkness, my heart raced as I realized my spotlight was too dim, its battery nearly drained. As I pondered my next move, a chilling, high-pitched vibrating sound pierced the night. It wasn't the grunt of a deer, but something far more sinister, a sound that seemed to throb with an ominous, threatening presence. There were tales of large cats in South Texas, but this was no cougar's growl. The sound vibrated and hissed, sending shivers down my spine. Deciding against venturing into the unknown, I remained holed up in the blind. As the hours ticked by, the strange sound outside escalated, intensifying my alarm. The moon, only half full, offered little illumination. Then a glimpse of movement caught my eye. Something massive was pacing just beyond the blind. What I saw next defied belief. Looming outside was a creature of nightmares, a towering entity at least 7 or 8 feet tall. Its form was a bizarre fusion of humanoid and dinosaur, with a lizard-like head. The creature's eyes glowed a menacing yellow, and I could sense an eerie intelligence in its movements. Petrified, I watched as it prowled back and forth, its intentions unclear. The creature seemed to be searching for something, and a dreadful realization dawned upon me. It might be after me. As the night wore on, I stayed hidden, my anxiety mounting. Without a firearm, I felt vulnerable and exposed. Occasionally, I risked a glance outside, hoping the creature would lose interest. Then, out of the underbrush, a javelina bolted, squealing in terror. The creature sprang into action, pursuing the terrified animal with a ruthless ferocity. In the ensuing silence, I knew the javelina's fate was sealed. Seizing the moment, I dashed from the blind to my truck parked 100 feet away. My heart pounding, I drove off into the night, fleeing from the ranch and the unearthly terror that lurked within. After the harrowing night at the ranch, I found refuge in my lodging, my body and mind racked with exhaustion. The night was restless, with thoughts spiraling over the inexplicable creature I had encountered. As dawn broke, I knew my time at the ranch was over. I hastily called my friend, informing him of the chilling presence on his land, and left without a backward glance. My name is Joshua, and I'm here to share a different yet equally mystifying experience I had in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Drawn by the allure of nature's enigmas, I often ventured into the wilderness. This particular adventure in July 2014 led me deep into the park, along the Trillium Gap Trail. The trail meandered through lush forests and past majestic mountains, a haven for elusive wildlife. As I hiked, a curious rustling noise halted my steps. In the dense foliage ahead, a creature emerged, unlike any I had seen. Towering and covered in dark fur, it bore a striking resemblance to the legendary Sasquatch. A rush of fear initially gripped me, but as I observed it closely, its demeanor seemed more curious than threatening. Approaching the clearing where the creature stood, I was driven by a mix of fear and fascination. Our eyes met, and there was a sense of mutual curiosity. Emboldened, I introduced myself. Speaking gently, remarkably, it seemed to understand, responding with deep, rumbling sounds. Though I couldn't decipher the meaning, our unique interaction transcended language, creating a connection between two beings from different worlds. During this surreal exchange, an elderly hiker stumbled upon us, struck by the gravity of the moment. They watched in awe, silently understanding the rarity of this encounter. Eventually, the creature retreated into the forest, leaving us in a state of wonder. The elderly hiker continued their journey, heart full of gratitude for witnessing the extraordinary. As for me, my emotions were a mix of joy and sadness. Joy for experiencing something incredible, and sadness, knowing many might never believe my story. As I walked back, my thoughts lingered on the creature. Unlike the wild bears I'd encountered, this being exuded a gentle curiosity, challenging my assumptions about the wilderness and its inhabitants. Word of my encounter spread, igniting the imaginations of locals and visitors alike. Some dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, while others speculated about undiscovered species in the park. Even scientists and researchers began planning expeditions, eager to uncover the truth behind my extraordinary encounter. The revelation of this mysterious creature set off a whirlwind of excitement and curiosity, but it also stirred a mix of emotions among those familiar with the park. Some seasoned hunters and hikers who had spent years exploring the park's depths found themselves grappling with a sense of unease and disappointment. The idea that such an extraordinary being had eluded them all this time, dwelling in the same wilderness they thought they knew so well, was both unsettling and humbling. They pondered over their past ventures, wondering how their experiences had never crossed paths with something as unique and otherworldly. For me, however, this encounter wasn't just a fleeting moment of awe. It ignited a deeper, more profound passion for the mysteries that nature harbors. It spurred me to delve further into understanding the myriad creatures that share our world, those seen and those yet to be discovered. This newfound dedication led me to volunteer with wildlife conservation organizations, contributing to efforts aimed at protecting and preserving the habitats of these magnificent beings. Meanwhile, far from the bustling city life, I lived a different reality. As a farmer for nearly a decade, I'd called a small plot of land in Missouri my home. This land, passed down through generations, was more than just soil and greenery. It was a legacy. Its evergreen pastures stretched for miles, bordered by a large river that sustained my crops and livestock. To the east, the deep forest, extending into the Mark Twain National Forest, stood as a natural boundary, one that I soon learned to respect and fear. Life on the farm, though rewarding, came with its own set of challenges. The forest, while picturesque, was also a source of constant concern due to pest outbreaks and the occasional intrusion of wildlife. My first few years were marked by a battle against nature's untamed elements, from wolves venturing out in search of food to a lone bear that once roamed my property. These encounters prompted me to build secure enclosures for my sheep and to adopt a vigilant sheepdog, Jack, to guard them. The safety measures seemed effective, but that sense of security was shattered in April 2012. It started with Jack's uncharacteristic behavior. Each dawn, he grew increasingly agitated, barking frantically towards the sheep's enclosure. As an experienced farmer, I knew better than to dismiss these signs. Then, one fateful night, Jack's distress reached a fever pitch. The sheep's bleats echoed through the darkness, compelling me to investigate. Armed with my shotgun, I ventured out into the night. Following Jack's lead, what greeted us was a sight so chilling it rooted me to the spot. Towering before us was a creature straight out of a gothic horror tale. Its wolf-like face was the only familiar feature. The rest of its body was an eerie amalgamation of man and beast. Its arms, unnervingly human, ended in vicious claws. The creature's stance was bipedal, unwavering in its upright posture, hinting at its natural form. The standoff between Jack and the creature was tense, each assessing the other. Then, in an act of bravery, Jack charged, sending the creature fleeing into the forest. I stood there, frozen, until the creature disappeared into the night. The police arrived later, confirming the encounter based on the dead sheep and the unusual tracks leading into the woods. The tracks were too large for a wolf, and oddly, they indicated a bipedal gait. That night marked a turning point. Sleep became a stranger, and every bark from Jack in the dawn hours would send a shiver down my spine, a haunting reminder of that terrifying encounter. Since then, every dawn brings a sense of apprehension. Jack's barks are no longer just a part of farm life. They're a trigger, pulling me back to the night when we faced something beyond our wildest comprehension. The memory lingers, a constant, unnerving presence in the tranquil solitude of farm life. The hope of getting past the haunting memories lingers, yet each day is a struggle to push through the vivid recollections of that eerie night. In 2019, my sister, with whom I've always shared a special bond, moved hours north for a new job. We vowed to stay connected, and I promised to visit her new home. However, the pandemic delayed my plans significantly. When the opportunity finally came, I was buzzing with excitement, eager for the reunion and the tranquility of a change in scenery. 2 days before my journey, my sister Janet called. There was an unusual edge to her voice, a mixture of jest and nervousness. She insisted, somewhat anxiously, that I start my trip early to avoid driving in the dark. Her emphasis on arriving before sundown seemed peculiar, but I attributed it to her protective nature and promised to heed her advice. On the day of the trip, a mishap with my alarm caused a late start. Breaking my promise to Janet, the drive started uneventfully, but as I left the cityscape behind, strange occurrences began to unfold. Time seemed to warp, and my radio behaved erratically, changing channels without prompt. These anomalies intensified as darkness approached, casting a surreal atmosphere over my journey. Janet's warnings about the rapid onset of darkness on the road to her house came to life startlingly. Nightfall descended abruptly, engulfing my car in an oppressive darkness, punctuated only by the weak glow of my headlights. In a bewildering turn of events, I found myself on a narrow side road, hemmed in by the dense woods. As I navigated this unexpected detour, an unsettling sensation of being watched crept over me. I tried to dismiss it as nerves, but a chilling, high-pitched shriek shattered my composure. In a panic, I accelerated, only to suffer a blown tire. Stranded and unnerved, I called Janet, who instructed me to walk to the highway while staying on the phone with her. The walk through the woods was harrowing. An overpowering stench of decay assaulted my senses, intensifying my fear. Then another shriek, closer and more terrifying, sent me sprinting towards the highway. I was convinced something was following me, toying with my fright. I reached Janet's car in a daze, and the night's events blurred into a jumble of fragmented memories. The following morning, everything seemed anomalously normal. Janet was cheerful, dismissing my experience as a product of exhaustion. Yet, I couldn't shake off the lingering dread. My return to her house was pleasant, but an unshakable unease persisted beneath the surface. It wasn't until I was about to leave that the chilling reality of that night hit me again. Opening my car door, I was greeted by the same repugnant smell of decay I had encountered in the woods. If the smell was real, what else about that night was true? The thought of unraveling the truth behind that harrowing experience filled me with an unsettling mix of curiosity and fear.